Welcome to the Deep Dive. If you are tuning in right now, you are probably looking for something a bit different than the usual surface-level summaries floating around out there.
Right, something that actually gets into the weeds a bit.
Exactly. You want to actually understand the mechanics as a concept, to get into the rigorous knowledge,
Yeah.
but without feeling like you are sitting in a dry university lecture just being talked at for an hour.
Which nobody wants.
No, absolutely not. So you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're opening up a really fascinating piece of research. It's a comprehensive, heavily sourced, exegetical document titled Surah Al-Qadr, Scholarly Insights and Lessons.
And our mission today is to look at chapter 97 of the Quran, which is Surah Al-Qadr.
Right. Now, it is only 5 short verses.
Right.
But the source material we are working with treats these 5 verses as a doorway into some incredibly dense, multidimensional metaphysical reality.
It really does. It unpacks so much from so little.
Yeah. We are going to be exploring the ultimate paradox of divine decree versus human agency. We're going to look at the unique arithmetic of eternal time, where time just stops acting linearly. And we will uncover some very specific, actionable formulas for a type of absolute forgiveness that completely wipes the slate clean.
It really is a remarkable piece of source material. And I think to fully grasp why a document dedicated to just 5 verses requires this level of extensive scholarly breakdown, we really have to start by setting the historical stage.
Context is everything.
Exactly. The context of when these words were first spoken is just crucial. This chapter, Surah Al-Qadr, was revealed during what is known as the early Meccan period.
And things were not easy back then.
No, not at all. For the early Muslim community living in Mecca at that time, this was not a period of theological debate and quiet, comfortable study halls.
Right.
This was a time of intense, suffocating persecution. We are talking about severe ideological friction, economic and social boycotts, and genuine daily physical danger just for declaring their faith.
Right. They were an incredibly marginalized, vulnerable minority, essentially under siege by the ruling establishment of their own city.
Precisely. And that is why the brilliance of this specific revelation is so profound. It wasn't just a historical memo or, a set of legal rulings.
But it's bigger than that.
Much bigger.
Okay.
The text highlights that this chapter arrived as a cosmic anchor. It was specifically designed to tie these besieged, exhausted, terrified believers to a metaphysical reality that was vastly greater than their immediate geopolitical struggles.
To kind of pull their heads above water.
Yes. It established an annual intersection, a literal temporal meeting point between the celestial realm and the terrestrial world.
Right.
It was a stark reminder to that early community that no matter how oppressive things felt on the ground, the heavens were actively, intimately involved in their daily reality. It completely reframed their suffering by zooming out to a cosmological scale.
Okay, let's unpack this, because before we even get into the specific verses and what they say about that celestial intersection, we really have to talk about the title of the chapter itself, Al-Qadr.
Yes, the linguistics of it.
The source document dedicates a massive amount of real estate just to the linguistic breakdown of this single Arabic word. It stems from the root letters Qaf Dal Ra. And it turns out this one word doesn't just mean one thing.
Right, Arabic is incredibly dense like that.
It operates on 3 entirely distinct conceptual axes, and they all happen simultaneously.
They do, and understanding how those 3 axes weave together is really the master key to unlocking the entire chapter. The document breaks them down beautifully.
So let's hit the first one.
Let's look at the first meaning of Qadr. It translates to destiny, estimation, or decree. In Arabic theological terms, that's al-qada wa al-qadar.
Destiny. Okay.
From a metaphysical standpoint, this refers to the operational nexus of destiny. Orthodox Sunni theology holds that God possesses pre-eternal, infinite knowledge of absolutely everything that has happened and will happen. Everything. This knowledge is conceptualized as being stored in what is called the preserved tablet, or Allah al-Mahfuz.
So that's like the master blueprint, the ultimate unchangeable database of existence.
Precisely. But Laylat al-Qadr, which translates to the night of decree, is the specific annual temporal window where the macro decrees for the upcoming year are essentially extracted from that eternal database.
Oh, I see.
They are detailed, itemized, and formally handed over to the angelic administration to be executed on Earth.
So it's very bureaucratic in a cosmic sense.
Very much so. The text is very explicit about what this entails. We are talking about the precise allocation of every single person's provisions.
Like wealth and stuff.
Exactly. How much wealth you will acquire, the lifespans of individuals who will be born, who will pass away, what illnesses will strike, and the major historical or political events for the next 12 months.
So it is the fiscal year budget of the cosmos, so to speak.
This is a great way to put it, yes.
Which is just a staggering concept to try and wrap your mind around. The idea that you are literally living through this specific night where the blueprint for your personal next 12 months is being finalized and dispatched.
It adds a lot of gravity to the night.
Just sitting with that first meaning is heavy enough. But then the text points to a second, completely different linguistic meaning for qadar, nobility, honor, dignity, and value.
Right. In Arabic, sharaf.
So the night is called qadar because of its unparalleled prestige.
Yes, the sheer honor of this specific window of time means that any action, any supplication, any act of worship you perform during it is assigned an astronomical value simply because of when it is occurring.
It's all about the timing.
Exactly. The time itself has a dignified status that elevates the spiritual rank of the person participating in it. It's an inherited nobility.
And then we get to the third meaning, which I found totally unexpected. It adds this highly physical dimension to what we've been discussing as purely spiritual reality.
The constriction aspect.
Yeah. The document specifically cites the contemporary linguistic analysis of scholar Numan Ali Khan here, highlighting that qadra also translates to constriction or narrowness.
It does. And it's important to clarify that this isn't a negative, suffocating kind of constriction, like being trapped in a small room.
It's not claustrophobia.
No, not at all. It refers to a literal, physical reality occurring on a planetary scale. The Earth becomes overwhelmingly narrow and constricted because of the unfathomable, mind-boggling number of angels descending upon it all at once.
So the physical realm is essentially experiencing a metaphysical traffic jam.
A celestial traffic jam, yes.
I just love letting those three concepts sit next to each other in my head. Destiny, nobility, and constriction.
They seem disparate at first.
Right. But if you think about it like an earthly scenario, it's almost like trying to navigate Times Square on New Year's Eve.
All right. I like that comparison.
It's physically crowded. It's an incredibly tight space. You can barely make. That's the constriction. But it's also this atmosphere of immense honor and celebration, a highly anticipated event. That's the nobility.
Exactly.
And during all of this, the ultimate trajectory of humanity for the next year is being decided and handed out. That's the destiny. It paints such a vivid, chaotic, yet perfectly ordered picture. It's a night of heavy cosmic administration happening right here on an overcrowded Earth.
That is a highly effective analogy. And what's fascinating here is how that first meeting we discussed, destiny and the handing down of the decree, immediately surfaces one of the oldest, most fiercely debated philosophical dialectics in human history.
Oh, the paradox of divine determinism versus human free will.
You got it.
Right, because the immediate logical question anyone would ask is, if the decree for the next year is already written in that preserved tablet, and it's simply being handed down to the angels tonight, what is the point of me doing anything?
Why bother?
Exactly. If the budget is set, why am I asking for a raise?
It's the ultimate existential question. Do we have any actual say in our lives, or are we just playing out a script?
And the sources dive into this.
Deeply. The source document maps out how early sectarian movements within Islamic history struggled deeply with this paradox and ended up veering into absolute extremes to try and solve it.
Give us an example of an extreme.
Well, on one end of the spectrum, you had a group called the Qadariyya. They were so protective of the concept of human accountability that they argued for absolute, unadulterated human free will, completely negating the idea of God's prior decree.
So they just threw out the destiny part entirely.
Pretty much. They argued that God only knows our actions after we commit them.
Which solves the free will problem, but creates a massive theological problem because now you are implying God is ignorant of the future.
Precisely. It compromises divine omniscience, which is a core tenet.
Right.
Now, on the completely opposite end of the spectrum, reacting to that, you had a group called the Jabriya. They leaned so hard into divine sovereignty that they argued for absolute fatalism.
Just absolute script reading.
They suggested that human action is nothing but an illusion. You have no agency whatsoever. You are essentially a feather blown by the wind of divine decree, merely acting out a rigidly pre-written script.
Which is a genuinely terrifying way to view existence. The idea that you are just a passive victim of a script, and your choices, your mistakes, your triumphs aren't really yours at all.
It strips away all humanity, really.
It removes all moral responsibility. If I do something terrible, Well, it was the script. It wasn't me.
It leads to extreme moral apathy. But the text carefully outlines the Sunni Orthodox middle path, which rejects both of those extremes and offers a framework that is so much more intellectually and spiritually nuanced.
The middle path is usually where the nuance lives. Who formulated this?
The classical scholar Ibn Taymiyya is cited heavily here, and he provides a masterful resolution to this paradox. He clarifies that we are making a mistake when we view the divine decree as a single monolithic thing.
Okay.
He explains that there are actually distinct levels of divine decree.
Okay, break that down for us. What are the levels?
The first level is the knowledge held with God in the preserved tablet, the Allah al-Mahfuz. That knowledge is eternal, comprehensive, and immutable.
Unchanging.
It never changes because God's knowledge of the ultimate outcome is perfect. However, and this is the crucial distinction, the decrees that are actually handed down to the angelic administration on this specific night, Laylat al-Qadr, belong to a second level.
A second level of decree.
Yes, these are known as al-Qada al-Mu'allaq. This translates to the contingent or suspended decree.
Contingent meaning it has a conditional clause attached to it, like an if-then statement.
Exactly. These are the operational decrees that are actually subject to alteration based on human agency.
Wow.
The angels are handed a decree that essentially says, if this person prays for health, grant them health. If they do not, allow the illness to progress.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
The angels do not possess the eternal knowledge of the preserved tablet. They only know the conditional instructions they are given for that year.
And that is a brilliant philosophical maneuver because it preserves God's ultimate eternal knowledge. He always knew what choice you would make, while simultaneously preserving the absolute reality of human consequence and choice in the moment.
Yes, it perfectly harmonizes both concepts.
And this is exactly where the source material pivots from high-level theology to incredibly empowering advice for you, the listener. The text cites a concept from Ibn al-Qayyim from his renowned book, Madarij al-Sibyan, and he calls this mechanism repelling decree with decree.
Yes, repelling decree with decree. It's a profound paradigm shift. You are not a passive victim of the angels descending with the paperwork.
You can actively participate.
The document states that through specific actions, primarily supplication or dua, but also through acts of charity and through actively repairing and upholding family ties, a believer can literally intercept and alter that contingent decree.
Wait, let me stop you there and play devil's advocate for a second.
Okay.
If orthodoxy says God already knows the final outcome, how does my raising my hands and asking for something actually change anything? Isn't the change already baked in?
It is baked into the eternal knowledge, yes, but it is not baked into the operational reality you are experiencing right now, nor is it known to the angels executing the decree.
Okay.
The genius of Ibn al-Qayyim's explanation is that the act of you making the supplication is also part of the decree. God decreed that a calamity was heading your way, but he also decreed that you would raise your hands in desperate prayer, and he decreed that your prayer would be the exact mechanism that repels the calamity. Invoking God to change a difficult decree is not a rebellion against destiny. It is the fulfillment of it.
It's fascinating to think about how we process that today. We are so often paralyzed by anxiety about the future, feeling like we are entirely at the mercy of macroeconomic forces or health genetics or political instability.
It's a very modern anxiety.
Right. But this theology flips that completely. Laylat al-Qadr is not a night to just sit back with your popcorn and watch the trailer for your next year unfold. It is a deliberate, open invitation to interface directly with the divine administration.
Absolutely.
When you raise your hands on this night and ask for provision or healing or relief from a crushing burden, your words have actual cosmic weight. Your supplication is the very mechanism designed to intercept the decree the angels are bringing down.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of human psychology, it completely eradicates the victim mindset. It means you are empowered. It means your sincerity in that exact moment is a highly active ingredient in the formation of your own future.
It turns destiny into a dialogue that is so powerful. Let's move into how the chapter actually introduces all this, because the opening verse is just breathtaking rhetorically.
Verse 1.
Right. Verse 1 reads, "Indeed, we sent it down during the night of decree."
The linguistic rhetoric here is profound, and the research document spends a good amount of time analyzing the word choices. The verse opens with the royal plural, indeed we.
establishing authority.
This immediately establishes an atmosphere of absolute supreme divine authority. It's a declaration of majesty. But even more striking than the we is the deliberate omission of the noun Quran. The verse simply says, "We sent it down."
Which seems counterintuitive.
Mm.
If this is the most important book in human history, why not name it in the opening sentence of the chapter dedicated to its arrival?
Because in classical Arabic rhetoric, substituting a grand entity with a pronoun without introducing it first is the ultimate flex, for lack of a better term.
The ultimate flex. I love that.
When you do that, you are making a massive statement about the object's universal supremacy. You are effectively saying that this object is so universally recognized, its presence is so undeniable, and its gravity so immense that it doesn't even need to be named.
Wow.
Everyone inherently knows what it is. Naming it would almost diminish its singular status.
It's like saying the city to someone from New York.
Yeah.
You don't need to specify which one.
Yeah.
But on a cosmic scale? However, the document points out a major historical and epistemological gap here that requires a lot of reconciliation. The Quran states, right here in verse 1, that it was revealed on this one night, Laylat Al-Qadr.
Right.
Yet, if you read any basic biography of the Prophet Muhammad, the documented historical timeline shows that the Quran was revealed piecemeal. It came down over a period of 23 years, constantly responding to very specific real-time events.
Battles, legal disputes, questions.
Exactly. So how do these classical sources reconcile that glaring contradiction? Was it one night, or was it 23 years?
This was a major point of scholarly dialogue for centuries. The orthodox Sunni reconciliation, which relies heavily on the towering classical exegete Ibn Kathir and the prominent companion of the Prophet Ibn Abbas, explains that the revelation didn't happen in a single motion.
Okay, how did it happen?
It actually occurred in two distinct cosmological phases. Phase 1 was the macro descent.
The macro descent. Okay, what does that look like?
On Laylat al-Qadr, the Quran was transferred in its absolute entirety all at once, from its eternal station in the preserved tablet in the highest heavens down to a sacred sanctuary located in the lowest heaven.
The lowest heaven.
Yes, this sanctuary is known as the House of Might, or Beit al-Izzah.
So the entire book, all 114 chapters, makes this massive journey from the highest reality to the heaven closest to earth on this one single night.
Exactly. That is the monumental wholesale transfer that verse 1 is referring to. It positions the text perfectly for the next phase.
Which is?
Phase 2 is the micro-descent, or tangim. Over the next 23 years, the archangel Gabriel takes the verses gradually from that house of might in the lowest heaven and delivers them down to the prophet's heart on earth.
Oh, that bridges the gap perfectly.
And this gradual descent corresponds perfectly to the real-time socio-political events, the struggles, and the spiritual development of the early Muslim community.
It's like downloading a massive software update to a local server in one night, but then slowly installing it onto individual devices over years as needed.
That is a very apt modern comparison.
But the research document adds another fascinating layer to this, bringing in modern exegetical views from scholars like Omar Suleiman, who harmonize this with the classical insights of Ibn Taymiyya. They point out that these two phases actually intersected in a really beautiful way.
Yes, the intersection of the macro and the micro.
Right. They explain that the very first micro-revelation, that famous, terrifying, earth-shattering moment when the prophet was meditating in the cave of Hira and received the first 5 verses of Surah Al-Qadr, read in the name of your Lord.
A pivotal moment in history.
Exactly. That specific event actually happened on Laylat Al-Qadr. So the macro descent of the entire book to the lowest heaven and the first micro drop of those first 5 verses to earth happened simultaneously. It acts as this perfect divine timestamp connecting the two realms.
And exploring that intersection leads the scholars to a vital, overarching life lesson. The entire majesty of Laylat al-Qadr, all of the nobility and the astronomical value we talked about, is derived entirely from one fact. It was selected as the vessel for the Quran.
It's all about the book.
The night doesn't possess inherent magic because of the way the stars are aligned or the Earth's tilt. Its honor is borrowed from the text it carried.
That's a profound distinction.
Therefore, as these exegetes deduce, human life operates on the exact same principle. A human being acquires value, dignity, and spiritual elevation strictly in proportion to their proximity to the Quran.
You absorb the honor by proximity.
If you want to truly honor the night the book came down, the most logical and spiritually potent act of worship isn't just ritualistic movements. It is intensive, deep contemplation, what is known as tadabbur, of that very text.
You are honoring the night by engaging with the very thing that made the night honorable. It's a perfect logical loop. And that idea of acquiring value perfectly sets up the next two verses, verses 2 and 3. We were just talking about how human life acquires value, and here is where the text completely shatters our standard human understanding of time, metrics, and value.
It really breaks the scale.
The verses read, "And what will make you know what the night of decree is? The night of decree is better than 1,000 months."
Let's look at the phrasing of verse 2 first, and what will make you know. In the original Arabic, this is wama adraka, this is a highly specific interrogative mechanism used repeatedly throughout the Quran, usually preceding a description of the Day of Judgment or a massive cosmological event.
It's setting you up.
It is a pedagogy of the unfathomable. Whenever you hear this precise phrase, it is a definitive signal that the human intellect is about to be severely humbled. It marks a hard shift away from our terrestrial linear logic into a purely divine reality.
It's saying you can't handle this.
It's pulling back the veil of the unseen. The reality of what is about to be described is so structurally vast, so beyond human experience, that human language can only attempt to quantify it by using comparative mathematical metaphors.
Because our brains literally don't have the hardware to process the actual reality of it.
Precise.
And here's where it gets really interesting. The divine metric provided in verse 3 isn't just an equation of equality. It doesn't say the night equals 1,000 months. It explicitly states it is better than 1,000 months. Let's just do the math on that for a second.
It's staring.
1,000 months is roughly 83.3 years. We are talking about over 83 years of continuous, unbroken, flawless worship. No sleeping, no getting distracted, no bad days. One single night outweighs an entire exceptionally long human lifetime of perfect devotion. The obvious question the document dives into is, why 83 years? Why this specific, somewhat random number?
To understand the selection of that specific metric, we have to look at what the scholars call the sabab an-nuzul. This translates to the occasion of revelation.
What prompted it?
Right. It asks, what was the specific historical or psychological context of the community that triggered God to reveal these exact words?
And what was that context?
According to authentic narrations detailed in the text, the Prophet Muhammad was given a divine vision displaying the lifespans of previous nations throughout antiquity. He saw that the people of the past routinely lived for centuries. They had hundreds and hundreds of years to amass towering reserves of righteous deeds, to repent for their mistakes, to build their spiritual portfolios.
Like an unfair advantage.
Then he looked at his own community, his ummah. The average lifespan of his followers was only between 60 and 70 years. Seeing this stark contrast, he felt a deep, profound sorrow. How could his people, with such a painfully short window of time on Earth, ever hope to compete in the divine scales of justice against nations that had centuries to prepare?
It's a very real existential dread, the feeling that you are fundamentally disadvantaged by the era you were born into. And the sources also mention a specific story circulating among the companions that compounded this feeling of inadequacy, right? The tale of the devout Israelite.
Yes, it's a very poignant narrative. The early Muslims were told a story of a tremendously devout man from the children of Israel. This man carried his weapons and strove continuously in the path of God, engaging in acts of immense physical and spiritual endurance for 1,000 uninterrupted months.
A literal 1,000 months of work.
When the early Muslims heard this specific story, they didn't feel inspired. They experienced severe psychological anxiety. They felt a profound sense of despair. They realized, doing the math of their own lifespans, that they physically would not live long enough to ever achieve that level of devotion, even if they started the day they were born and never slept.
It was mathematically impossible for them.
It was in direct, merciful response to this collective spiritual despair that God revealed these verses, effectively gifting the community a temporal multiplier.
It's an incredible historical detail. It shows how deeply responsive the text was to the emotional state of the people receiving it. This revelation is fundamentally the eradication of spiritual despair. It's a fascinating paradigm shift for you listening today, too. We are so heavily wired to view time linearly. You make a mistake in your 20s, you spend your 30s and 40s making up for it. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. But this concept introduces a qualitative elasticity to time.
The classical scholar Ibn Rajab al-Hanbali speaks directly to this dynamic. He writes extensively on how a single moment of acute, Unadulterated sincerity on this specific night can completely collapse decades of spiritual deficit. It is the ultimate systemic reset.
You don't need a time machine.
You don't need a time machine to go back and fix the last 20 years of negligence or mistakes. You simply need to be intensely, sincerely present for this one night. It represents a radical paradigm shift in how we are taught to view divine mercy. Mercy isn't just about forgiving the past, it's about condensing time so you can outpace your own failures.
Which is such a comforting, revolutionary idea. But, of course, this leads us directly into the ultimate epistemological paradox of this entire subject, the great mystery of this deep dive. If this one night is worth more than 83 years, if it is the ultimate systemic reset that can collapse decades of deficit, exactly when is it?
The million-dollar question.
You'd think a date this monumentally important would be circled in bright red on every calendar universally agreed upon. But the source text reveals that there has been an intense, centuries-long, highly complex debate over the exact date.
It is arguably one of the most fiercely debated, meticulously researched topics within the entirety of Sunni Hadith scholarship. The document we are reviewing synthesizes the monumental work of academic giants like al-Dahabi and Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani.
These are heavyweights.
Absolute heavyweights. They note that there are over 40 different distinct scholarly opinions regarding the exact timing of Laylat al-Qadr. And the bewildering part is, almost all of the major opinions have highly authentic, empirical evidence backing them up. It's not just people guessing, they are looking at data.
Give me an example of the data.
For instance, some scholars point definitively to the 21st night of Ramadan. This is based on a highly authenticated narration where the prophet saw a prophetic dream indicating he would be prostrating in mud on Laylat al-Qadr.
Mud.
Yes. And then, historically, on the morning of the 21st, it rained heavily, the roof of the mosque leaked, and he was indeed seen with a muddy forehead at the Fajr dawn prayer.
So, case closed, right? It's the 21st. The empirical evidence matches the prophecy perfectly.
You would think so. But then other scholars argue vehemently for the 23rd night. Why? Because another prominent companion reported seeing the exact same phenomenon, the prophet prostrating in water and clay, but this companion swore it happened on the 23rd.
Oh, wow.
Then you have the 24th night, which is heavily supported by the profound scholar Ibn Abbas, based on his calculations of the lunar cycle. And then, of course, you have the incredibly popular, almost culturally dominant opinion of the 27th night.
The 27th is the one you hear about most often today. And the text details some fascinating, almost esoteric evidence for this one. You had a senior companion named Ubay bin Ka'b, who was so certain it was the 27th that he would swear a binding oath on it without any hesitation.
He was absolutely convinced.
And then Ibn Abbas supported this 27th night theory using actual mathematical numerology from the Quranic text itself. The hosts banter about this in the source material. Ibn Abbas pointed out that the Arabic pronoun hiya, which translates to it is, and refers directly to the night of decree, is exactly the 27th word in Surah Al-Qadr.
Yes, the numerological alignment is a very popular supporting argument. But when you have authentic reports pointing to the 21st, 23rd, 24th, and 27th, what do you do as a scholar?
It's a puzzle.
This is where the synthesizing view comes in, championed by brilliant analytical minds like Imam al-Nawawi. He looks at all this contradictory but authentic data and harmonizes it by concluding that the night isn't fixed.
It moves.
It actually rotates. It shifts among the odd nights of the last 10 days of Ramadan from year to year. One year it might be the 21st, the next year the 27th, the next the 25th. This elegantly validates all the authentic sightings from the prophet's life because they were simply observing it in different years.
It's an elegant solution to the data problem, but it begs a much larger philosophical question. Why is it hidden at all? Why all this sleuthing, this numerology, this debate? Why not just reveal the rotating schedule?
There is a historical reason for that.
Right. The text actually tells this fascinating, deeply tragic story of an erased memory that answers this.
It is a sobering narrative. The authentic Hadith literature records that the Prophet Muhammad was actually informed of the exact, precise date for that specific year. He possessed the knowledge.
He knew it.
He joyfully stepped out of his dwelling and walked toward the mosque, specifically intending to inform the congregation of the precise night so they could prepare. But as he came out into the courtyard, he saw two of his companions engaged in a bitter, heated, voices-raised argument.
Over something trivial, probably.
Because of the negative energy of that interpersonal conflict, the precise knowledge of the date was divinely lifted or erased from his memory in that exact moment. The revelation was revoked. He was then instructed to simply tell the people to search for it in the odd nights of the last 10 days.
Two guys arguing literally cost humanity the exact date of the most important night of the year. It's almost painful to read.
It is a heavy realization.
But the life lesson embedded in that tragedy is incredibly stark for you listening today. Vertical alignment with God is fundamentally obstructed by horizontal fractures in your community. Think about the gravity of that mechanic. The knowledge of a night worth 83 years of worship was revoked because two people couldn't regulate their anger and get along.
It's a powerful statement on community.
It shows that the toxic nature of discord, of holding grudges, of engaging in petty fights with your family or your community, it literally blocks the descent of divine blessings. The text makes it clear. If you want to seek cosmic peace on Laylat Al-Qadr, you cannot be a source of chaos on earth. You must first cultivate interpersonal peace in your own life.
It's a profound prerequisite. But this raises an important theological question that the classical scholars debated. Was the loss of this specific date purely a punishment for the community's bickering, or was there a deeper hidden wisdom in the concealment?
And what did they conclude?
The classical polymath Ibn Hajar explains the profound pedagogical wisdom behind this ambiguity. He argues that human nature is inherently lazy. If the exact date were known with absolute guaranteed certainty, complacency would inevitably take root.
We would hack the system.
We absolutely would. People would completely ignore their spiritual development for 364 days of the year, show up to the mosque for that one specific night, check the box, and then immediately revert to their old habits the next morning.
It's the ultimate cramming for a final exam mentality.
Yeah.
You don't actually learn the material. You just memorize it for the test and forget it the next day.
Precisely. It creates a transactional relationship with the divine rather than a transformational one. By shrouding the night in ambiguity, by making it a moving target among the last 10 nights, God institutes a psychological mechanism that forces shock.
Shock.
Shock translates to an eager, burning yearning. It forces the believer to build endurance over 10 consecutive nights of intense devotion. You have to push yourself consistently through fatigue and doubt, and in doing so, you inadvertently forge a habit of behavioral consistency.
Which is the real goal.
That consistency is designed to outlast the month. The effort you expend in the search, the discipline required to maintain focus over 10 nights, is just as spiritually transformative as actually catching the night itself.
The searching is the transformation. That is a brilliant way to frame the ambiguity. It turns a missing date into a spiritual training camp. Let's move to verse 4, because this is where the physical reality of what is happening during that search gets even more intense. The translation reads, "The angels and the Spirit descend therein by permission of their Lord for every matter."
The linguistic analysis provided in the source document for this verse is absolutely crucial to understanding the scale of the event. It focuses on the specific Arabic verb used to describe the angel's descent, which is tanazalu. Classical grammarians point out a fascinating anomaly here. The normative standard grammatical form of this verb should be tatnanazalu, spelled with two tas at the beginning. That standard form would indicate a continuous, prolonged, steady, perhaps leisurely descent.
Like a gentle snowfall.
Exactly. However, the deliberate morphological omission of that prefix ta in the verse changes the entire visual implication of the word. It implies a descent that is unusually rapid, subtle, overwhelmingly concentrated, and explosive.
So it's not a gentle snowfall of angels over the course of the night. It's a sudden, massive, explosive burst of celestial activity breaching the earthly realm.
Yes, a torrential downpour of the celestial into the terrestrial, and the verse specifically isolates two distinct descending parties, the angels and the Spirit. The question is, who is the Spirit?
Right, because spirit is a loaded term that gets used in a lot of different ways across different traditions.
Exactly. While some fringe interpretations throughout history have suggested it might refer to a distinct, unknown angelic entity or a manifestation of divine mercy, the overwhelming consensus of classical Sunni exegesis identifies the Spirit, or Aru, unequivocally as the archangel Jibril, or Gabriel. He is the chief of the angels.
But if he's an angel, why separate him from the angels? Why say the angels and Jibril?
It is a rhetorical device used to honor his supreme hierarchical status. You mention the general group, and then you mention the most distinguished member of that group to highlight their importance. Furthermore, remember the context we discussed earlier. Laylat al-Qadr is the anniversary of Jibril's initial earthly mission to deliver the Quran to the Prophet.
Ah, right. It's his anniversary.
It is his night. He leads this descent as a commemoration of that event, and the
Yeah.
sheer volume of angels accompanying him in this rapid descent is staggering. The document cites a hadith where the prophet stated that the angels on earth during this night are more numerous than all the pebbles on the face of the earth.
More angels than pebbles on the earth. If you just try to visualize that level of congestion, going back to our earlier point about the earth being constricted or narrow, it's an ocean of celestial beings. And they are descending, as the end of verse 4 says, for every matter, which loops us right back to our earlier discussion about the decrees and the fiscal budget of the cosmos.
Exactly. For every matter signifies the ultimate operational handover we discussed. This is the moment the paperwork is delivered. The decisions regarding who lives, who dies, whose provisions are expanded, whose are constricted, what nations rise and fall, it is all officially dispatched in this explosive descent.
So, practically speaking, if you know that billions of angels are descending rapidly all around you, carrying the literal blueprint of your next year, what are you supposed to do? How do you physically and emotionally stand in that moment?
The posture is critical.
Right. The text shares some incredible advice from Nouman Ali Khan on the required posture for this. And it's all about absolute, unvarnished vulnerability. You cannot intercept the decree with arrogance or a sense of entitlement. He argues you have to take a comprehensive, painful stock of your flaws.
You have to look at the ugly parts.
You have to look at your hidden sins, your embarrassments, the things you aggressively hide from your family and friends. You stand there, often in tears, acknowledging your complete powerlessness and bankruptcy, while simultaneously appealing to absolute power. It's the ultimate confessional posture.
It is a profound state of spiritual nakedness. You are bringing your most broken self forward because only a broken vessel can receive the specific type of mercy being offered on this night.
Which brings us to the final verse, verse 5, and really the ultimate goal of all of this intense theological and physical buildup. The verse simply says, "Peace it is until the emergence of dawn."
This final verse acts as a divine seal upon the night. The document explores how it represents a metaphysical lockdown. The word salam, meaning peace, is used here as a standalone predicate. This is a very specific grammatical choice.
How so?
It means the night doesn't just contain peace as an attribute. It is the very embodiment, the literal definition of peace. During this window, the text notes that Satan, and all demonic forces are completely, utterly paralyzed.
Paralyzed.
They are stripped of their ability to inflict harm, to possess, or even to whisper malevolence into the hearts of people. The metaphysical environment is sterilized of evil. Furthermore, this piece is highly interactive. The billions of descending angels we just talked about spend the entire night actively greeting the believers in prayer with salam until the break of dawn.
Because the exact date is hidden, as we discussed, the text notes that believers historically look for empirical physical signs after the fact to see if they successfully witnessed it. It's like looking for footprints in the snow after a monumental event has passed.
Looking the weather the next day.
Exactly. They look to the sky the next morning. They look for the sun rising without its harsh, blinding rays, appearing almost like a pale brass dish. And the classical reasoning for this is that the sun's rays are literally obscured by the sheer density of the billions of angels ascending back into the heavens at dawn.
A literal eclipse of angels.
They also look for climatic tranquility, a night that is perfectly pleasant, noticeably neither too hot nor too cold. And they look for celestial stillness, meaning a night with absolutely no shooting stars.
And why no shooting stars?
Because, according to the cosmology, shooting stars are celestial missiles fired at demonic entities trying to eavesdrop on the heavens. Since the demons are paralyzed and locked down on Laylat Al-Qadr, no missiles need to be fired. The sky is completely still.
It's a beautiful integration of the physical and the metaphysical, but the document makes a critical pivot here. While those empirical signs provide psychological comfort to the believer the next day, obsessing over them misses the point.
The signs aren't the goal.
The true master key of Laylat al-Qadr is not what you see, it is what you say during it. There is a very specific prophetic formula provided for this exact window. The Prophet Muhammad's wife, Aisha, who was a brilliant scholar in her own right, famously asked him, "If I happen to know which night is Laylat al-Qadr, what exactly should I say?"
The most practical question you could ask.
He didn't give her a long, complicated litany. He taught her a short, highly targeted formula. Allahumma innaka afuun tuhibbul afwa fa'fu ani, which translates to, "O Allah, you are the most forgiving, you love to forgive, so forgive me."
Now, I want to slow down here because this is perhaps the most important takeaway for anyone listening to this deep dive. The translation uses the word forgive, But the text draws a massive fundamental distinction between two Arabic words that both get translated as forgiveness in English, maghfirah and afu.
If we connect this to the bigger picture of why a person stays up all night seeking this window, this linguistic distinction is absolutely everything. Let's look at maghfirah first. Maghfirah comes from a root word meaning a helmet or a shield.
A she?
Theologically, it means God covers or hides your sin. He shields you from the painful consequences of it, both in this life and the next. You won't be punished for it. However, the sin itself remains written in your ledger. It is on your record. It's like accidentally spilling ink on an important document and putting a dark blanket over the stain. Nobody can see it, you won't get in trouble for it, but if you lift the blanket, the stain is still there.
Right, it's covered, but it exists.
Exactly. But a few, which is the specific word the prophet instructed Aisha to use in this precise prayer, is entirely different. The linguistic origin of a few brings up the imagery of a powerful, relentless desert wind blowing across the sand dunes, completely obliterating any tracks or footprints left behind.
Wiping the desert clean.
Theologically, it means to utterly erase, obliterate, and efface the sin from existence as if it were never committed in the first place. When you receive a few, your slate isn't just covered with a blanket. The stain is chemically removed. The angels who recorded the sin are made to forget it. It will not even be brought up for discussion on the day of judgment. It is total, absolute erasure.
Total erasure. That is the 83-year reset we were talking about earlier. But according to the sources, there's a catch. The architecture of receiving this specific type of forgiveness, as explained by Ibn Rajab, contains a very harsh but beautiful truth. To receive unadulterated pardon, to get that cosmic effeu, you must embody it yourself. A heart that is filled with malice, bitterness, and an unwillingness to forgive others forms an impenetrable barrier to divine forgiveness.
It is the principle of congruent reciprocation. God interacts with you based on the attributes you display toward his creation.
Which is incredibly challenging. You are telling me that I have to forgive people who have genuinely wronged me, people who have hurt me, stolen from me, or betrayed me. I have to wipe their slate clean in my heart if I want God to wipe my slate clean. That is a massive emotional ask.
It forces your ego out of the equation.
You can't just stand there crying, asking for your cosmic slate to be wiped clean if you are meticulously, bitterly keeping score of everyone else's wrongs against you on earth. It forces a complete psychological cleansing before you even open your mouth to pray.
It is the ultimate mandate for horizontal reconciliation. It proves that in this theological framework, you cannot completely separate your vertical relationship with God from your horizontal relationship with his creation. They are inextricably linked. If you harbor grudges, you are bottlenecking your own divine pardon.
So, taking all of this into account, the macro and micro descent, the contingent decrees, the search for the hidden night, the total erasure of a few, how do we actually do this? How did the earliest, most devout, and presumably most successful generations of Islam, known as the Salaf, operationalize this night? We have spent an hour unpacking massive metaphysical theory, but what did it look like in practice on a Tuesday night in the 7th century? The document references Ibn Rajab's manual, Latif al-Marif, to explain their methodology.
The primary practical step they took was an institution called itikaf. This is a dedicated spiritual retreat usually performed in the mosque during the entire final 10 days of Ramadan. The narrations state that when the last 10 days arrive, the prophet would tighten his waistcloth.
Which is an idiom, right? Like rolling up your sleeves.
Exactly. It was a metaphor for abstaining from normal worldly pleasures, including marital relations, and exhibiting extreme laser-focused determination. The goal of itikaf was to physically and psychologically sever all earthly ties in order to achieve pure cosmic connectivity. They isolated themselves to be present for the descent of the angels.
How did that apply to us now?
The contemporary scholar Omar Suleiman modernizes this concept brilliantly for our era. He points out that today, tightening the waistcloth and entering retreat necessitates a ruthless digital detox. You simply cannot connect to the subtle descent of celestial beings if your brain is hyperstimulated, endlessly scrolling through social media, news feeds, and group chats. You have to actively, intentionally sever the digital noise of the earth to have any hope of hearing the celestial silence.
That is such a relevant translation of the practice. The digital detox as a spiritual prerequisite. And the second step the text notes they took was mastering what we could call the subterfuge of sincerity, or ikhlas. This part is wild to me. The text documents the extreme, almost comical lengths these early generations went to in order to conceal their worship from others. They were terrified of performative piety. They didn't want anyone, not their friends, not their spouses, to know how devout they were being.
Yes, the pursuit of ikhlas, or pure sincerity, was paramount, because they understood that an act done for the praise of humans receives its reward from humans, not from God.
Right. The document mentions that some of them would literally apply oil or lip balm to their lips while fasting, so their coworkers wouldn't see dry, cracked lips and realize they were fasting. They would actively put on a facade of normality to hide their extraordinary devotion. It was a profoundly intimate, fiercely protected secret between them and God. They understood that the ego is the enemy of a few. Nobody else needed to know.
That level of meticulously guarded sincerity is exactly what attracts the Allah few. And importantly, recognizing that Laylat al-Qadr is first and foremost the celebration of the Qur'an's macro descent, their primary action during this isolation wasn't just repetitive chanting, it was deeply reciting and contemplating the book itself. They engaged in that tadabbur we discussed. However, the classical scholars, in their profound pastoral wisdom, addressed a very real concern that arises when you emphasize all this rigorous physical worship.
Yes, the question of capacity.
Exactly. What about those who are incapacitated? What about the person who is severely ill, confined to a hospital bed? What about the exhausted traveler? What about an elderly person who cannot stand up for hours? Or what about a menstruating woman who, according to Islamic jurisprudence, cannot physically observe the ritual prayers or fast during that time? Do they just miss out on the 83 years of reward? Are they excluded from the cosmic reset because of their biological or situational reality?
This is such a deeply comforting point for anyone listening who has ever felt sidelined by their physical reality or felt guilty that they couldn't physically push themselves the way they wanted to. The text quotes early scholars like Al-Dahak and, again, Ibn Rajab, who state definitively and beautifully, God rewards the sincerity of the heart, not merely the mechanical performance of the limbs. If your heart is entirely present, if you're yearning that shock is real, your physical limitations do not disqualify you from the divine mercy of the night. The afew is accessible to absolutely everyone who harbors sincere intentions, regardless of their physical posture. It's a vital clarification. As Ibn Rajab notes, what really matters is the acceptance of a deed, not merely having done it. You can stand in prayer all night with an arrogant heart and receive nothing, and you can lie in a hospital bed with a broken, sincere heart and receive the reward of 83 years. The currency of the night is the piety of the heart. Which brings us full circle, so let's synthesize all of this. Surah Al-Qadr is a microscopic 5-verse chapter that houses utterly macroscopic realities. It completely dismantles our standard human perception of time, proving that one single moment of raw, unvarnished sincerity is worth more than a lifetime of passive, linear existence. It takes the terrifying, fatalistic concept of destiny and turns it into a dynamic, interactive dialogue through your own empowered supplications. And it offers the ultimate liberating slate wiping to the concept of a few. The true metric of catching Laylat al-Qadr isn't looking at the sun the next morning to see if it looks like a brass dish. It isn't about having a mystical Hollywood-style vision of descending angels. The true metric is waking up the next morning with a fortified faith, a habit of behavioral consistency that outlasts the month, and a heart completely, ruthlessly emptied of malice toward others.
And I think this leaves us with a final, profound reflection to mull over as we conclude. If the architecture of divine mercy is designed in such a way that a single night of profound vulnerability can entirely overwrite decades of spiritual deficit, how does that qualitative elasticity of time challenge the way you view your own past mistakes? And how does it reshape your anxieties about the future?
A massive, deeply personal question to sit with. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into Surah Al-Qadr. We hope you continue seeking this level of rigorous knowledge, and more importantly, that you embrace the incredible intersection of the celestial and the terrestrial in your own life. Keep learning, keep questioning your assumptions, and we'll catch you on the next deep dive.